This program might contain strong language. If you think you may be offended, switch off now.
Hello, everybody. Ash, what are you going to serenade us with today?
I don't think I have those permissions granted to me yet. How are you?
I'm great. Welcome, everybody, to the Inside Mojo podcast, where each week we take a look at another key moment in WatchMojo's 20-year history on YouTube. I'm your host, Rob. With me, as always, is our musician friend, Ashkan Karbasfrooshan. How's it going?
We have the same uniform on today. So
yeah, black tees all the way.
Pitchfork after last night's Seattle Habs game.
Oh, yes. I didn't watch the entire thing, but I was out with friends and I saw it on in the background.
Yeah.
So today,
up to 1:15 Eastern time, so I may be a bit tired. But let's go. Thanks.
Yeah, those Western games are killer. Today we're talking about the hack that temporarily crippled WatchMojo in 2016. But before we get to that, you had written recently an interesting article titled IDGAF, which if you can put that together, you can imagine what that stands for with a nice visual representation right there. Let's talk about this. I kind of I read the article and I kind of know what you're referring to, but is there anything that you want to elaborate about on that?
No, I mean, it's all kind of, I find related connections between any things. So I remember back in 2017, when I had brought on a chief financial officer, one thing he said to me was, which I really did appreciate. He was like, I must say you have really good judgment. He's like, you generally avoid mistakes and when you have to make a decision. And honestly, that was really what I always strived for. We talked about my influences, people like Cyrus the Great and others, the sense of making good decisions is something that I always liked. So when we were going to do this topic on hacks, which you're like, well, what is the relation? I wrote it. I was like in Orlando and we were talking last week and just seeing Disney. And I was thinking of like these big companies like Disney, Warner, News Corp, Fox, and, Hearst, and all these like really, really successful storyteller entrepreneurs who built these companies. I was like, yeah, you know what? Like you got to manage a team, and it's not like technology where it's like, does the search engine work or not? It's like, does Excel add up or not? And I go, it's really, really hard because if you're Guy Laliberté, the Cirque du Soleil founder, you hire, some business people, lawyers, even like your designers may be 9 to 5, but you also have like an army of like jugglers and fire breathers who like really are artistic and they're the soul and heart of your organization, but they could care less about like a lot of things. So, I mean, there's no perfect anecdotes and parallels, but like I said, the analogy I used was like, imagine you're running a concert venue. I don't know. I mean, you're a music fan. Remember the Great White Fire? And, you're always telling your team, you're like, hey, guys, to protect you from not burning in a fire, but also our patrons, I'm like, let's leave the store, this alleyway empty. Mm-hmm. And like, once you see some guy puts a case of beer, some guy puts a, ladder, some guy sleeping, God knows what's happening. So a few weeks ago, a month ago, there was like something like that, and it was really more precautionary. And, I sent an email, which is like the kind of email I send every few years. Like I remember when we all worked in the office, sometimes the team would just leave all their dishes in the sink. And like I just sent an email with like the Seinfeld scene where like Kramer puts like concrete in like
the laundry machine.
To make a point. I'm like, guys, don't make me do this. It's like a joke. So, but the comment was bring it all together is I said, I am seen as like a domain expert. I am seen as somebody that others view as experienced and knowledgeable, so to speak. But I still try to be humble and modest and come to you guys for basic things. And I'm like, did you guys get a notice from the city saying this alley could now be like a, stock repository? Did somebody tell you could put a double lock on it? It was more like tongue in cheek. And to bring it now home with hacks, what happened was, and I don't mind sharing it. It's interesting for me, but like one of the employees sent this email to one of my board members. And why am I saying this? Because it boils down to judgment, like I think if this person we have a suggestion box. If somebody would have emailed me anonymously and said, hey, I don't like what you said. I think it's unfair, or this is why you're wrong. I would have been like, cool, good feedback. It's a shame I can't ask this person more question. But I was like, on vacation, And I just come back from a board meeting where we had a great board meeting. The company's doing phenomenal. The industry's everything going in our direction. And my board was like tiptoeing. They don't want a crazy Ash to show up, which I would not. But they were like, yeah, somebody said, hey, Tyler, somebody was like, hey, an employee sent this. What's it about? And obviously, I'm not the one to throw anybody under the bus. So I still defended the team. And I was like, well, no, it was one error. I downplayed it and I put it in the context of everything's great. But I was just sitting there. And like after the board, I told my fellow VPs because I just didn't want it on my chest. And I was like, the word was not pissed. It wasn't angry. Definitely not vindictive, vengeful. There was just this frustration and disappointment because I was like, for 2 years, we've talked about this. The board, yes, they represent all stakeholders, but they represent investors. So I'm like, here, I've been protecting you guys when you make mistakes, which we all do. I have my own list of top 10 mistakes I do. And I'm always out there positioning you guys in a good light. And I would never slander, disparage you to the board. I always project you in a good way. But after 2 years where they're like, should we have layoffs like every other company? To simplify, they also had reasons not to. And I defended and I kept the team together. I'm like, this is what somebody does thinking they're being a hero. And maybe in their head they are, or maybe they have valid concerns. But I'm like, all you did is you made the whole team look like a bunch of jabronis, and which would actually bring more attention on you. So I thought of judgment and I thought of the CFO's comment. But ultimately, and I mean, you were copied on the email, I'm very direct. I told the team, I said, look, somebody did this. I think it's fine. It doesn't offend me. I questioned the judgment and the rationale. But I said, just so it's also clear, I go, I am like a geek of all these things, management. I care about ethics, governance. I go, I've studied whistleblowing. This is not whistleblowing. Yeah. Whistleblowing is if we're doing something unethical or illegal. I even know what snitching is, which is like, yeah, if you have a neighbor who's like a gangbanger and you kind of call the cops, you're snitching, but society doesn't come and beat you up because they're like, you took a criminal off the street. I'm like, here, just so I understand, you guys made a mistake. I said, I come to you asking for feedback. You guys don't give me that courtesy, even though I'm technically the boss. And I'm also CXO, right? Like I'm in charge of legal. I'm in charge of finance. I'm responsible for all these things. Like I'm the crazy one that wants to do every idea, but then the devil and the angels. Like, so it was disappointing, but I did think of like things that come out, whether it's to your board or to employees. And my main, and I'll end here on this, I'm agnostic, atheist maybe even, but I do believe in that concept of judgment day. I do believe that the truth always comes out. So I run the business almost like we're a publicly traded company, like to the extent it's normal, where I'm like transparent, I'm accountable to all. To viewers, I used to say when I was Mr. X, I was like, I'm your ombudsman. If we do something wrong, tell me. But so in today's show, we're going to talk about hacks a little bit. And we actually did a list. I mean, we'll talk about the WatchMojo, but it was fascinating when I was researching this, when you brought it up last week. I was like, oh, we did a video, and I kind of started to look at it. So I was like, let's actually this show talk a little bit about some of those entries, and then happy to dive in with the WatchMojo hack.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go further, I think we have a poll that's going up on our YouTube channel. So just wanted to mention that for the audience that's watching. You can go in and weigh in with your thoughts there. We want to know, what do you think is the biggest reason that companies get hacked? Do they not invest enough in cybersecurity? Is it that hackers are always one step ahead? Are employees making mistakes, or is it often an inside job? So let us know what you think.
I would love your thoughts on that before later on you read the answer. And then I have but I don't want to bias anybody. And who is I? I'm just a guy here in front of a camera.
You are Mr. CXO, which is what I wanted to ask you about right now. Everybody knows what a CEO is, but how do you define CXO?
CXO is actually not Chief Experience Officer, which I think in corporate lingo, that's sometimes they use it. You can imagine if you work at a bank or if you work at Disney theme parks, there might be a CXO to discuss like everybody's experience. CXO is something that I actually have been using for almost a decade. We had a CFO at one point, and then when the gentleman wanted to leave to try new things, we didn't really need to replace them, given that my background is finance and we have a great team in admin. Same thing with marketing. We did have like a CMO at some point. We have a VP who handles marketing, but ultimately a CXO is. I thought of like Craig Newmark, the founder of Craigslist, the disruptor in online classifieds. He used to describe himself as just like a customer service rep for all issues pertaining to Craigslist. And in many ways, I feel like that's what I do. And I love my job. Every day I have these like set things to do. And then I have all this somebody called it somebody else. They were like shoveling shit, which is very crude, but I understood why she would say that. But it's ultimately you get it as like a help desk of either your marketing team, your editorial team, your legal, and you have to be versatile. And the analogy I use is Tom Brady has to be an assassin on every play. He's a sociopath. I remember one time a Detroit Lion cornerback or safety was like, no, you're not throwing here. The motherfucker threw 4 passes against that guy, connected on all 4. 2, maybe even more were touchdowns. I don't know if that guy was cut afterwards or not, right? So the point is, in business, it's different. Like here, I view it as this is kind of you're running the show. Yvonne, the producer, he's the boss. If I step out of line, he could tell me off. Even when I played soccer and I was the striker, I would always listen to all feedback. So the CXO is something that I just feel is going to rise. More and more people are going to use it. There was a fellow CEO actually who founded Lightspeed, a much bigger company out of Montreal, and Dax De Silva. And when he just said, oh, you got to wear many hats, I was like, yeah, it's just you're the CXO now. You're not just the CEO. And he was like, I love it. So I wrote the article. And that's also the spirit, right? When it comes to judgment and hacks, sometimes I'm like, hey, as like the editor-in-chief, I'd love to cover this topic. But from a legal sense, we're probably shooting ourselves in the foot.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into the specifics on WatchMojo's hack, we do have a top 10 list that we produced on the biggest hacks of the 21st century, which would be a good thing to look at. So if we can pull up that list.
Passwords for documents in the same file folders as those documents themselves. It's really just a face-palming security mess.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 biggest hacks of the century so far.
This is bad. Worst DDoS attack I've ever seen.
And if that person is out of this country, will you have jurisdiction over
I
that
don't
person?
think we need to watch the whole thing, but maybe we could just go through some of the entries.
Yeah, I think we also have the article up here that we can kind of scroll through, but a lot of these are very well known.
That are the most famous.
All right.
There you go. So yeah, number 10 on the list, the DNC email leak from 2016, the 2016 election.
Well, this is probably, we could call it the Hillary Clinton final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, this is an interesting one. I mean, we should spend maybe just a few seconds on each, not too long. But this one to me is interesting because this one you clearly could tell somebody had an agenda. But whether or not it was the objective was what was accomplished, I don't know. This is an interesting point that oftentimes there could be like a stated goal, but when you release everything into the wild, then somebody could be like, well, wait a minute, there's this email where like Hillary did this or the FBI director does that, and it's a can of worms. The genie's out of the bottle. But yeah, this one was, I think, pertinent in my humble opinion, just because this is what killed Hillary's campaign right before the election.
Yep. Number 9, the Equifax leak of 2017.
Do you trust financial services? Like in terms of your data, like if you bank with, Acme, Financial or whatever, I don't want to slander any banks. Because when I worked at Visa, I just assumed that like, that's when it opened my eyes. I was like, wow, everything I do, everything I buy and geographically where I go is pretty much known. And then I was like, mobile phone. So now I just assume I'm boring. I'm a nobody, but what's the point anymore?
Yeah, I kind of assume that there's like a certain risk with anything that you give information to, like it's kind of just something that you accept at this point. Like there's a little bit of risk everywhere. I try not to overthink it too much.
That's fair.
We've got Celebgate at number 8. That was a crazy one. The Apple leak that a lot of iCloud photos got released of celebrities, including Jennifer Lawrence, Kaylee Cuoco, Kirsten Dunst. That was bad.
That was very bad, and I think it kind of was carte blanche for a lot of like sexist and misogynistic like overtones, because if a gal in her private time is doing God knows what she wants to do, more power to her type of thing. But if a guy, first of all, who wants to see those pictures, they're not going to get leaked. So I remember that, and yeah, I mean, that sucks. And, again, be careful what you want to put on.
Yeah, exactly. At number 7, eBay's leak from 2014. There was a data breach that compromised 145 million accounts.
Yeah, to me, all these, especially like, Web 1.0 platforms, I feel like there's just so many legacy systems. Like legacy, not vis-a-vis IBM, legacy vis-a-vis like, Google, or as you start ChatGPT now at OpenAI, you're just going to take all the best practices and start on in theory, more strong, robust, but it just takes one entry point. Oh, foreshadowing. It takes one entry point, which we'll touch on later on with WatchMojo, to really bring down, no matter how much security you have, you're vulnerable.
Yep. We've also got the Facebook hack from 2013. 2 million passwords were stolen. And then in 2019, there was an even larger breach resulting in 500 million Facebook accounts being hacked, which, yeah, I mean, Facebook is kind of notorious for problems. I like people to this day. You always hear of friends whose accounts have been hacked and stuff like that. It seems to be an ongoing occurrence that happens with them.
Yeah, and I also think I don't want to speak specifically of Facebook because I do know some people there and they're great people in terms of tech chops and all. But I think what happens is sometimes internally, we talked about the CXO. Sometimes internally, you could have a marketing person that's like pushing the envelope for what they should do in terms of signups or in terms of like how many steps do you need to ask before you can create an account, just to keep it pretty pedestrian example. If the counsel's in that room, or if like you're a CTO, chief technical officer, or mainly your chief information officers in the room, they may be like, let's hold on, let me check something. But oftentimes what happens is a combination of, I don't want to say ignorance in a bad way, but lack of awareness of laws and protocol versus just a communication breakdown, and that's why the whole CXO content I like, because I'm like, you need to bring a lot of perspectives when you make these decisions.
Yep. Number 5 on the list, First American. In that one, 885 million mortgage documents were stolen by hackers.
Okay, yeah.
That's major. We've got Ashley Madison. That's another scandalous one.
That's that's very, very fascinating. I remember I knew there was this gentleman that used to do marketing for them, and I just met him on LinkedIn. And at the time that this happened, it's honey, I swear it was research. Yeah, I mean, this one is like life affecting. It's not just like, oh, people know my credit rating. Ooh, the shame. I'm not going to get that second credit card. I mean, this is obviously affects lives. And, you have people like, still, I mean, whatever you think, I don't sign up to these services, even online dating. I met my wife before these took off. Actually, it's funny. When I started my career at Ask Men, a lot, because it was like a men's online magazine, we had a lot of my clients in advertising were the online dating platforms. And so I would kind of be like, okay, how many of these are real? Are there any fraud? And like the issues that they had to deal with, very different than today. Obviously, Ashley Madison was to hook up with like married women, basically. So yeah, I mean, it's like I always go, if you sign up to these services, assume it's going to
your own risk, basically.
Yeah, it's like it's going to get out. So you have to be.
Yeah, I'd like to know exactly how many divorces resulted from that leak specifically. That would probably be a staggering number.
Really, really, really adventurous follow-up,
Yeah. Number 3, there's the Yahoo leak of 2013 and 14, which was enormous. At number 2, Sony Pictures Entertainment. So Sony's been really bad with leaks.
So Sony, this one to me is the one that I thought of, which was basically a crazy storyline. It was the dictator, which allegedly pissed allegedly pissed off Kim Jong-il. Like, this is the story. And then he got his hacking team to go in. And the stuff that they found was really more embarrassing, but there were like, C-level executives who would say extremely disparaging things about minorities. And anyway, so this ended careers. This was really, really a big deal, but it just goes to show that, Sony Pictures pissed off a dictator, and the dictator unleashed a cyber attack on them, which really ended careers. Like, if you think of it, and I've also talked about the concept
of a movie.
It is. There you go. Better than The Dictator.
Yeah.
I've actually talked about this concept of corpo nations, where like the Googles, Alphabets, Microsofts, Facebooks, they're like massive. They operate across borders. Their soldiers are across all. And so here what happened was a country went after a corporation. It's just surreal. And I didn't believe it at first. I was like, no, this is not North Koreans that are doing this. But that was apparently what happened.
There's also a mention here of the huge PlayStation Network hack that also happened in 2014, the same year, where a lot of people's information got stolen. And just as a tangent, in the gaming world, hacks have become commonplace. Like, not just where users' information has been stolen, but companies like Insomniac Games, who do most of the big Marvel games these days, had internal leaks where plans for future games were leaked and stuff like that. So this has become a pretty common thing to see in the gaming world also. Number 1 on the list is the WhatsApp hack of 2019.
It's funny. I don't even remember. I mean, obviously, I might have been part of the team that looked at this, but I don't even remember this. Like this was to me, obviously huge in terms of numbers and whatnot. But again, I just assume you're going to get hacked. Like I really think, or not you're going to get hacked, but like whatever you put in email or you communicate, maybe you've heard me even in meetings. I'm like, oh, so-and-so is in here. I don't like speaking behind their back, but if they were here, I would say this as well. Like I do believe that things get out, whether it's through a hack or employees talking or whatnot. And I will add, not that I care about this that much, but even my board was like, we read your email. There's nothing violating any HR protocol here.
Right.
You're upset. We appreciate you doing this. So I'm just getting that. But my assumption whenever I write anything is somebody's going to read this that you did not intend to be a reader. And they may lack context, right? Anyway.
So yeah, that's that for our top 10 list. The main thing that I'm seeing that's different from WatchMojo's hack is that it's not like users' information was stolen and disseminated across the internet. It was more like our site was essentially taken down, or our YouTube channel was taken down. All the videos were removed essentially, which caused a huge blow to the business. And so maybe you can elaborate on that. What exactly happened? What was the situation? How'd you find out about it?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, in a way, I hate to say this. I wish it was just the website, because the website's a tiny piece of the business, although the website is protected. But again, we're not infallible. So no, Hacker Nation, I'm not challenging you. I'm sure you could hack us 5 ways to Sunday. It's not, no need. We're not here. We come as friends. So what happened was we used to, Google is funny in that they launched Gmail. And obviously for a lot of their platforms, and Google went from like a consumer platform search, Maps, even YouTube, but over time more of an enterprise commercial platform as well. Gmail eventually had Gmail Enterprise. Google Enterprise in the cloud competes with like Adobe or whatever. And so even YouTube, which initially was like a consumer place where you go sign up with like, Rob Funk Master Flex on Assassin's Creed Killer, like you had this weirdo email at Gmail. One of our colleagues had, I got the skills. And that's a fact. I won't name who.
If you knew that before hiring, would you have like gone through with it?
Questionable judgment. I said, no. So like, we might have used whatever, Ashk. It wasn't me though, but I don't want to. But let's say you like my email was like Ashk Mojo face there, whatever, at gmail.com. So we all had emails like that. And well, what happens? Well, if Dick, Tom, or Harry is using that for WatchMojo, but they go on a trip or they use Wi-Fi, as much as you could be like, don't do. I mean, you have to be empathetic and like common sense there. It was no way to really build layers of security. Plus, two-step verification was somewhat new. And I used to be like, hey, everybody, if you don't mind, if you got time, sorry to, I was very polite etiquette usually. 99% of the time, that's who I am. 1%, sure, I say you're crazy and people don't like it. But so I never really forced people. I wasn't like, if this isn't set up by Friday, you're fired. I mean, who talks like that, right? So what happened was one of our colleagues they didn't do anything wrong. They just, at one point, their account got compromised. They could have been at a Wi-Fi, again, they could have been at a Wi-Fi to try to do something for work on vacation. So I never blamed anybody for this. It was just a lesson. But so somebody's email that was also a personal and work email to access our YouTube account, like that person had an official @WatchMojo account, but that's not what we used to log in at the time. It was compromised. And it's like, once you get in like a Trojan horse, you could leave crumbles to be able to do further damage. So what ended up happening was this person got in through the kind of, there was no real firewall, but not a technical, but a symbolic firewall. Once they were in, they could then basically do whatever they want. Now, again, maybe I'm idealistic, naive person, but they could have deleted. You said something that wasn't really correct, and I'll clarify and correct. They could have deleted every video. And then, then it's hard to re-upload. They, by the way, Google has cache. Like they have cache memory. You can bring it back. It's a pain in the butt, but it's they don't want to go there. But I believe that's basically, there should be an option. But so what they did, it was more nuisance. Like it was more, even if it might have been personal towards me or because we featured something in a video, which I doubt. Like I never knew the why. But they just reset all of our metadata. So the
Okay.
title of every video almost became like, I forgot, I should really remember it, but something really irreverent and childish. So there was no way already, we had like thousands of video. There was no way we were going to go back and manually change it. So even though this was right before La Saint-Jean, June 24th, I was all excited about the Euro. It was 2016. It was right before I was going to go to Greece for the first time, like literally the day before. We actually had a happy hour scheduled. Obviously, we kept it. And the team was like, why is Ash smiling? And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Come here and just break shit? You know, so I was like, but it was also by then, I will lie. I wasn't just this Zen master. It was like, I knew YouTube was going to help fix us the metadata. But what we realized right away was, hey, wait, like we're not getting the same views. Our videos are not getting, as much as we don't care about the algo, we care about the audience, the editorial, we still pay attention. You know, we're not stupid there. It's like I look at the weather. I don't go out in shorts when it's -20. And so, yeah, we realized something was off. And then when we chatted with YouTube, they were like, you effectively changed the metadata. So the signal that you're sending across all your videos is that these are new videos. So whatever SEO, search engine optimization, or, you know, algorithm mojo in terms of related videos and what is suggested to users on YouTube, they're like, you're kind of lost all that, which sucks. But I was like, again, it's weird when I think about it. I was extremely pissed. I blame myself quite a bit, but I was like, okay, like hacks could be fatal. And this was before we did this video, but I was like, hacks could be, you know, could end lives, could end careers, could end relationships, could end your business. You might end up hurting your clients. You might be susceptible to a class action lawsuit. When CrowdStrike cybersecurity systems were mentioned in a lawsuit by Delta, the real culprit, not to throw Microsoft under the bus, but it was a Microsoft issue that led to CrowdStrike, because all these things talk to each other, right? So long story short, very quickly, I was like, this sucks. But I did feel that, like, yeah, absolutely, it did hurt us. You know, it did set us back. But okay, you could sit there, but that's kind of like saying, again, I'm not a car person, but imagine you are, and you have 3 Lamborghinis, 2 Ferraris, and somebody steals, you know, your Porsche. Okay, it sucks. You don't want to lose your Porsche, but like you got 6 Ferraris and 3 Lamborghinis and the Bugattis. I mean, it was like not a good parallel. You know, obviously I would have been concerned, like if stuff happens and you're like, oh, I have to let people go because the business is really hurt. But this wasn't, knock on wood, that. This was just, we fucked up and we were unlucky, but that is life, and you move on and you don't sit there and sulk because people are like, shut up. Like I'm unemployed, you know, or like we wish we had 50% or 80% of the views that you now have relative to before, you know, so you need perspective in life.
You know, you've heard stories about hackers who like go ahead and like find weaknesses in like government systems and like get in and then end up getting hired by them to like improve their security afterwards. And it doesn't sound like this was a super malicious attack because, as you mentioned, they didn't take down videos. They just kind of reset the metadata to be like, haha, look what we can do type thing.
Yeah, but you also don't want, and I'm not challenging anybody, but I also think there's like, it could have been like, I hate WatchMojo, this is malicious, but also damages could happen. Like I also think to the hacker, you know, don't think just because, I'm not talking about hackers, but sometimes online, I see people under anonymous profiles thinking they could slander, defamate, defame, do whatever they want. And I'm like, do you really think the platform, if I go get a junior novice lawyer could walk to the courthouse, just say, this statement on this platform caused me harm, or prima facie caused me some harm, define it as you want, the judge, and you're like, I want to see who this is because this goes above and beyond freedom of expression. You can't dox people. That's the irony. But if you go and get a court and say this is causing me harm, especially in certain jurisdictions, you bring it to Papa Elon Musk. You think Elon Musk is going to care? He's going to be like, this is who this person is. It's funny, even Anonymous, the legendary Anonymous, we're not, you know, this comes from props and praise, but I don't understand. Their X account is verified, which means you had to provide an ID.
Right.
Whose ID did they provide?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder that myself.
Yeah.
How do you assess the impact of the results of the hack?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, sure, it costs us millions of dollars, but of possible future revenue.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks. And some people would look at and go lament and, you know, jump off a bridge. I didn't care that much about us. What did hurt me more, like, was we lost a lot of possible views going forward. Like, it basically, if you looked at our trajectory and how we were keep growing, I mean, we're talking about 1 billion plus video views the next year that YouTube did not serve up. So I think of the little boy who grows up and wants to learn about Batman, or the gal that wants to know what the best sandwiches and owls are, and what music she should listen to when she discovers Ozzy Osbourne. No, I'm kidding. But that was really, as like a storyteller entrepreneur, like kind of irritated me a bit more. But again, I mean, after that, I went to Greece on vacation. First time I was there. But again, like you've heard me say it before COVID, I used to always think back at my life, especially professionally, and be like, oh, what a great time, flying high and doing this and doing that. But I swear to you, if I actually think of a given moment, all of those moments were actually like very, not just, I wish, melancholic. They were just, things were aggravating me. Because again, as CXO, you have like the weight of not just 10 executives or one department and their employees. You have like this delta of shit coming your way. And I was really just like, this was eating away at me. I kept going to bed worrying that, maybe we'd get hacked again. I literally used to wake up thinking, oh shit, we got hacked. But then very quickly I was like, glass is half full. It's all good. This is just another thing to deal with. And now I actually sleep better. I have fun. I don't give a fuck anymore. That's the thing. Not that I'm not passionate, but I'm just like, who cares? Like, I don't control this. Like, it happens, and just be positive and charge ahead.
Yeah, tying it back into the theme of the first article that we spoke about.
It's all connected. It's all connected, sir.
Where does it land on the list of setbacks that you've experienced with WatchMojo?
Oh my God. I mean, this one's weird because it was like, once we had found product market and flying high, could we be twice the size, more employees, more this? Sure, but I'm not driven by like greed, like in the sins and virtues sense. I'm like, okay, so that sucked. Look, the lawsuit was really sucky because if we would have lost, that would have just been fatal and over. Running out of money sucked as well, but that was harder because, I mean, you're not going to go steal money. So that was actually hard because there was a chance I couldn't pay the team. So that's when I had to go get a mortgage and all that. That was, again, this sucked a lot. Like the impact was severe, but more of like, not opportunity cost, more of like foregone possibility. So this actually, I mean, I didn't plan this, but this is a good exercise in like greed versus gratitude. Like, so for without a doubt, it hurt us. But was I going to become a person that was like, oh, I could have had another steak and another lobster tail? Or was I like, hey man, like I could eat a piece of bread and be happy. You know what I mean? Like that I will never lose. So it sucked a lot. It's also like when I was a kid, once we got robbed, and just that you feel violated. You know what I mean? You do feel like, and again, just imagine other forms of that, especially for women. And so like, to me, this was like still a superficial, but I did feel very much like violated type of thing because it was a security and I didn't know who and why. So the paranoia, but then I was like, well, look, this was also telling the team, I go, we are high profile. Even after the shooting in San Bruno for YouTube, I told them, I said, look, I don't want to use the word, this was a crazy person, but this was somebody who had mental health issues, who as a creator, was just tired of the platform and censorship and algorithm. She decided to take a gun and go to San Bruno. It changed YouTube's outlook of their role and their responsibility. With great power comes responsibility. I use this to tell the team, I know I always say we're unknown and we can't think we're hot shit or anything, and let's not change that. But I was like, we are a media company. That's why even like our sign at our old office, as much as I wanted a huge sign, I was like, okay, it was just to protect the team. I was like, what if one day I'm in my office? I used to work with the team, but eventually as we grew, I had my little office. That worry was there, that some guy was just like, I don't like that you guys put Assassin's Creed on this list of bad movies. That's my life, man. And he shoots 5 people. And I'm like, as a CXO, I think of these things, which I know sounds batshit crazy, but you're always worrying about these things. So it was just a lesson to kind of point to, and almost an opportunity to point to be like, let's just realize that our vantage point is this, but this is how the world views us. We are a target of attacks. So
yeah, an unfortunate reality. So we did post a poll earlier in the episode asking what our audience thinks is the biggest reason that companies get hacked. And I believe you asked my opinion. I think, hackers are always going to be advancing with the times. I think like one day, we'll be using quantum computing to like hack companies and stuff like that. I don't think it's ever going to really end, because as much as security improves, hackers will continue to improve too. So that's my 2 cents about it. What does the audience think? 33% say that companies don't invest enough in cybersecurity, which, you know, could be an argument to be made, because some companies will try to cut corners where possible. And, you know, sometimes you don't know the risks until something happens to you. 33% also say hackers are always one step ahead. 22% say it's often an inside job, which is, yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, high percentage for that. I don't think there's too many like inside hacking jobs that happen, but I could be wrong. And 11% say employee error, which I think should actually be higher, because
I mean, this was, again, an error I could have made, and probably an error I've made, but this was, I think, falls more here. But because you could, but to be fair, it was also, well, at the point we didn't invest not so much money because we had, it was just, we weren't forcing people to use the tools that were available. I think the main one is, you know, like the same way that an entrepreneur is not driven by money, a hacker is driven by the challenge, you know? So I think a hacker will always want to kind of prove that they could climb a taller mountain of, you know, security defenses. So I think that's really the human spirit. Now, it doesn't help if, like Sony, you do a movie called The Dictator and attack a dictator, right? So, yeah, no. So I'm not, a bit surprised, but not wholly surprised. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we wrap it up, I want to talk a little bit about Inside Pitch. Tell me about this. This is something that you have promoted on LinkedIn as a tool for people to come to you with ideas.
Well, so a couple of things. I get a shit ton of people looking for work. And during COVID, I registered opentowork.tv. Pretty good URL to have, but so busy. And so I did have this idea of like just doing like, everybody could come as a person and do those 3 questions I asked. What are you really good at or better at than most? First, we're talking a little bit about open to work, and then we'll come to this. And then the other one is like, what are you like the Wayne Gretzky, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, whatever, Tom Brady, like, what are you like really good at? Then the second one is like, what's your culture? You know, what kind of culture do you want? What kind of company size and all that? Like, where would you really excel? And then like, you know, what is it that you really are, you know, you like, you're passionate. So that was like kind of like, I would always help people navigate them. And it was a bit chaotic because I like to help people, but I was like, okay, I have a full-time job. So I finally set up opentowork.tv, which is a way for people to, especially those that I don't know, it's easier to just be like, fold this out. And then also my team, we could look, if you guys are looking for like a marketing resource, or if you're looking for like a production person who's really good with a certain equipment or whatever, you know me, I like structured. I'm pretty chaotic, but I balance it with some structure. So once I set that up, I will not lie, I was like, okay, I get a lot of people looking for work, but I really get a shit ton more for people looking for investment or people looking to partner with WatchMojo. And again, I want to help them all, but it's like, I feel bad going up to Dick, Tom, and Harry who are busy being like, hey, this company that I don't know, that I just am trying to help, that I'm just trying to be a good human being, do you mind looking and seeing if there's a fit? Like, I empathize with my guys and gals. They're like, fuck, man, I'm busy. Why do you want me? It could be great. So I did always want to build this kind of database approach so that if somebody is like, I wish we had a partner, a vendor that could help us with this trivia initiative, I'm like, wait, go to this database, Google it, search it, and you find somebody. So it was also for WatchMojo, but I get so many people, and truthfully, I love investing, but I have a full-time job. But 2, I did want to just relay a general feedback of why I'm very selective. And when I have this one-on-one with with an entrepreneur, even if I go, it's general human beings, they're like, this guy's talking about me. He's saying he doesn't want to do this because this is what he thinks I am, which is not true. So half of that was just getting a general update so people could read it on LinkedIn. So it's very like opening up. It's not vis-a-vis you, buddy, or your company. And I got turned down by 100. So I know it doesn't feel good. Yeah. But then the second one was really just to, okay, maybe we could do basically, imagine after our run of Inside Mojo, which we could consider. There's always topics to discuss, make it more news, bring guests and all that. But I was like, imagine if we had a show that was, let's go back to the log line there. So I was like, we'll go with Inside Pitch. Pitch is a double entendre, obviously pitching, but also like baseball. I may get feedback that's close to the chin type of thing. Because part of life, and it goes back to judgment, is getting feedback and giving, receiving feedback and you know, giving feedback, and it's how you react. But so the idea is, I'm not going to invest in your stupid startup, but you could convince me otherwise. But let's have some fun. So let's talk about it. So imagine Beat Bobby Flay. So my idea, and I'm going to actually share it so that if people want to make it better, my inbox is open. I'm going to have like each podcast show, it could eventually be in a studio, but I don't want to wait for Hollywood. This is easy for me to do. This is a layup. So let's say the show starts and there's 2 contestants who come, like Beat Bobby Flay, and it might be thematic, right? Where they're kind of not going at it, but like the way you have like a lifeline, you have a stick you could also put in the other person's wheel. So you got to be able to have some fun. But so let's say there's 2 entrepreneurs or 2 storytellers who are solving something related in 2 different approaches. I ask them some questions, and a bit like Shark Tank, I'm also going to, or this is more apprentice, I won't lie at first. I'm fine if it's like 3 or 4 of us, but it just because I don't want to wait for people. I'm tired. I need to change this thing that I wait for others to behave a certain way. So from now on, I'm just going to do what the fuck I want. Help me or get out of my way. And so the idea is I'm going to have probably a couple of industry friends. So if some guy comes to us and he's like, I want to build a WatchMojo or a Complex or a Hot Ones, I may actually have Rich, founder and former CEO of Complex, in that show where we're going to ask questions and this and that. And then the idea is, yes, win Ben Stein's money. Either I'm open to invest, WatchMojo is open to invest, one of the guests could be open to invest. I mean, I do need to look into a bit of the law, but I don't see any issues. But I also know a shit ton of investors. So this is a fun way. And you have a conversation like Shark Tank, you still get exposure. I've gotten, right now I would say 10-ish submissions. But I mean, as I promote this more, I think some people are like, what the hell is this? But it's meant to be fun. And it's still intended to help and give feedback. But, we're going to have some fun. And we're going to, I need to go from being a masochist to a bit more of a sadist. So there you go. I won't lie.
Cool. More power to you. Looking forward to seeing how that shapes up. It seems like it has some potential. So, I think that pretty much does it for this week. Next week, we'll be talking about the launch of Miss Mojo and the woke era that ensued. So that'll be a little bit of a engaging episode, to say the least, I think.
I'm sure it will be it will not hurt anybody's feelings. Let's put it to that way.
Definitely not. All right, Ash, thanks for your time as always.
Thanks for yours.
Thank you for everybody who watched. See you next week.
Cheers.